So guess what? Nancy Pelosi's daughter, remember she did a documentary. She's always on Bill Maher talking about how horrible January 6th is. Well, she's lying when she says that.
Okay, I was going to ask you, does she actually, did she, because I wasn't sure what she said in public about it.
Well, you know what? I don't watch Bill Maher, but I heard she goes on and says all that horrible stuff. So here, listen to what remember the shaman?
Oh, I remember
the guy going through January 6th.
I'm voting for him for president.
The guy with the buffalo helmet and
he's my.
I would vote for him. Anyway, guy's super peaceful. His life was dedicated to peace. They put him in solitary confinement. They gave him like a 50-year sentence, some crazy sentence.
Yeah.
And listen to what Nancy Pelosi's daughter has to say about it. Watch this.
I mean, what did the shaman do? He stood there. Right. What did Paul do? He stood there. The shaman got how many months?
Right.
41 compared to 8.
He got 31 months in prison, according to her. And she's sitting there. This is Nancy Pelosi's daughter. She's flummoxed that the shaman, who her own words, did nothing.
How many years is that?
Did 30. So two, a little over 2.5, right? Did nothing.
Maybe the cops should have mentioned what you're doing is illegal and you should leave, sir, before they let him into the
room.
Right.
Cops took him, gave him a tour of the Capitol.
Read a poem or something? He didn't, or prayed or something?
And they prayed for the cops, prayed for everybody. This is Nancy Pelosi's daughter admitting January 6th was a scam set up by the establishment, and they're over prosecuting the people to set an example and to try to make a political movement illegal.
You know,
they're doing. She's admitting that what they're doing is what they claim Trump will do. So this is the oldest trick in the book. You accuse your opponent of exactly what you're doing. You know who started that? The first time I heard it, Goebbels.
Goebbels, yeah.
Goebbels was the one who said.
Goebbels, I like to call him.
What do you call him?
Goebbels, but I think Goebbels is good too.
I call him Goebbels.
Yeah. Gerbils, I call him.
Ah.
Classic Gerbils.
Classic gerbils.
You know, Bill Maher put more work in doing a deep dive into the facts on to exonerate Andrew Cuomo.
Yes.
Which, by the way, not that convincing.
No, not convincing at all.
But this, he won't
look into this. He won't look into this. He won't look into Pfizer. He won't look into the vax. He won't look into lockdowns. He won't look into anything.
I bet he did look into the vax.
I bet he did.
Because he's
but he knows he can't say it.
Yeah.
Right.
He's a take one for the team guy.
Just like Cornel West, when he came on and couldn't admit that Joe Biden's actually more racist than Donald Trump and responsible for black and brown people being locked up at way higher rates. And Donald Trump's actually responsible for getting them out of prison. He couldn't do that. Just like,
I'm kidding.
Yeah. You know, he knows.
When I saw that, and I think that the government is going to go for more, that they're going to look to get bigger. Like, people are criticizing some of the people that got home. A lot of people have been getting probation and stuff. So I think they're looking to make people, like, I think if Paul went now, he'd get a longer sentence.
What did he do? What did he do?
He just walked in with the Trump flag into the Senate.
That's it.
That's it. DC is a lot of people that work for the government. Right. And it's a lot of, I don't think that's sympathetic.
The jury. The jury is going to be. We don't think the trial should be held there.
Well, if you got moved, you totally get off.
What did she say?
If you got it moved, you'd totally get off.
So if they moved the trial of January 6th protesters out of D.C., they would totally get off.
Oh, you don't say.
That's what she just said.
Yeah. Chuckle.
And they laughed. So, but if we rig the jury system against other Americans for political purposes, we could get them thrown in jail.
Well, maybe she, in this private meeting, is saying that's wrong. I haven't seen what she said on Bill Maher, honestly.
Okay.
So I'm curious to know how she talked about it. If she really talked about it like, oh, yeah, they stole our democracy shit, then really fuck her. But maybe she went on and said something like this. I don't know. I didn't see it. It's weird that...
If it was an insurrection, you're supposed to be in line... marching. You're in the military, you know this.
No, that's
you were supposed to have a plan.
Exactly. It's called operations order. You sit down overnight with your soldiers. You go over. All right, you're gonna go here. You're gonna go in by this side. At this time, we're gonna take over this. There's none of that.
If it was an insurrection, it's the sorriest insurrection in the 20th, 21st century ever. Nope.
So if it was an insurrection, it was the sorriest insurrection in history ever.
I'm gonna have to look up what insurrection is because I honestly. I'm not.
An
quite
insurrection
sure.
is, I think, a rising up of people trying to overthrow a government. Am I wrong about that? It
Yeah.
it implies an armed uprising that quickly fails or succeeds.
Well, we already
For
failed.
instance, a revolt by the Young Turks that surprised party leaders. So, they weren't armed.
Yeah, right. So we've already failed.
That's
for the
another thing.
definition.
That's another thing Cornel West tried to pretend, that those guys, they were trying to overthrow the government on January 6th.
Well, the dictionary online says a violent uprising against an authority or government. So maybe they're.
It wasn't a violent uprising.
No, I know. Oh, but
There was violence that day on January 6th, for
but
sure.
just not in the Capitol building.
But it's not inside the Capitol building. It was kind of outside the Capitol building, and most of it was instigated by FBI plants in the crowd.
Yeah, I don't believe any of it wasn't from FBI plants because, again, these are people that love cops.
That's right.
They love cops. This is
protesters-
during defund the police. All cops are bastards. Here's one group I know that wasn't saying that. Trump voters.
That's right.
Yeah.
The worst insurrection in history. This is Nancy Pelosi's daughter. Don't you feel like a chump now?
Well, she's saying what I was saying.
Okay, so I want you to know that I'm from New York City, and I was always a long time ago friends with Gavin McGinnis, who's
Hey,
supposedly
me too.
She's friends with Gavin McGinnis.
Yeah, I am too. I know him for years.
There she is admitting she's friends with Gavin McGinnis. I thought that's supposed to get you canceled. Well, that's why she only admits it in private, I guess.
Oh, somebody tweeted at me one time. It says, now that I do the show, I get like, people don't like you come at me. Like I give a rat's ass how they feel. So like, is it true that you were associated with Gavin McGinnis? I'm like, I texted him because I hadn't thought to text him in a while because they said that. I go, yeah, anybody else you don't approve? Like I give a shit. I mean, I couldn't believe someone had the balls to try to like I would, if you have any problem with anybody I've ever associated with, really S my D. Do I have to say it like that? I mean it. Anyway, Nancy Pelosi's kid feels the same.
Here you go. That was the disturbing scene outside the American Museum of Natural History that no longer has Teddy Roosevelt's statue, by the way, in New York City. That's on Saturday. Do you believe this? Pro-Palestinian protesters shouting at the cops, preventing them from entering and destroying the museum and even lighting the Israeli flag on fire. Yeah, this is America. Here with his reaction, retired NYPD inspector attorney himself, Paul Morrow. Paul, NYPD, KKK, what does that do for morale?
I mean, it's ridiculous. First of all, for years now, the NYPD has been majority minority. All right, there's that. Secondly, the last couple of police commissioners, people of color. All right, much of the executive ranks, people of color. So, and by the way, great strides in bringing women into the department. It's completely divorced from reality. This is just BLM rebranded. They're just looking for, most of these folks, if you went out, they couldn't find Palestine or Israel on a map. This is just the latest flavor. That's what they're jumping on.
And the other big story is a story that's not going away over the last 5 years, and that is more and more men and women turning in the badge. I quit.
Yeah.
At an alarming rate. Check this out. These stats just came across for 2023 already. There's been 1,476 leaving with a full pension. Okay. How about this? 1,040 leaving without a pension for a total of 2,516. This is the largest exodus in decades.
You've never seen it. I've never seen that. Nobody left before 20. That was sort of, the promised land. Okay. A couple things going on with this.
Because you get half your salary for the rest of your life.
That's right. And you still get a pretty good benefit package. Now, look, you're not going to get rich, but you're going to have 3 hots in a cot for the most part.
And you usually get out, you're around 40 years old if you join around at high school.
If you join young, you actually can leave as a relatively young person. There's a few things. First of all, because they're so short on police right now, they are destroying them in overtime, right? So what that means, and this is a nuance, but it just shows the poor planning of the city. cops are not going to see, or at least this is the calculus, that they very well may not see these kinds of numbers for their pension going forward. Your pension can be based on your last year in service. So a lot of cops say to themselves, you know what, I'll never see these numbers again. I have to go. I don't want to go, but I got my 20, I'm going to go. If you don't have 20 and you're leaving, that's the really bad sign, because that just means, you know what, I'll start over. So your time is not going to carry over. You're starting from the beginning. You're a rookie in Florida. That's a very bad sign.
Paul, tell me what they talk about in their cop cars is the main reason, what they're most worried about and the main reason they're leaving.
Right. So, you know, police do a tough job. It's often very dangerous. For whatever reason, you don't really think about getting shot. You don't really think about the danger. What cops worry about day in and day out, what they talk to each other about, is getting indicted. They're afraid of criminal liability these days. They really do feel like they have a target on their back. Does anybody worry about that? Sure, some people worry about the danger, but for the most part, they're worried about the fact that they're dealing in a hostile system that sees them as the bad guy, that undoes whatever work they do immediately. The perps get right out.
And they look what the Attorney General thinks about cops.
The president has said, in his estimation, the criminal justice system is intrinsically, institutionally racist. That's the president of the country. So you know how they feel.
So, and they don't have, they have qualified immunity, or don't they?
Qualified immunity is not what people think. The thing that they really need to be is indemnified. And there is a trend nationwide of law departments saying, you know what you did is outside our standards. You're on your own.
And we got about 29,000. We've got 30,000.
We're going to go down to about 29,000.
And we're stopping the next 2 academies, half of which are not full anyway, but we don't have the money, they claim, because of the illegal immigration in the city. See how it's all linked.
All the trends
Terrible
are bad.
governing.
Yeah.
Welcome to a special edition of You Left Shit Out. I'm your host for today. I'm CJ, or that stands for Compton J. J in real life. You can find me on Twitter at Compton Made Me. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Of my social media, that's probably the most active. Not to say that I'm real active, but that is my most active if you want to just follow what I'm doing here. But I was going to start with the Abby Martin, Maya Khalifa video as an intro, and then I stumbled upon this gem right here, where, you know, the title is about pro-Palestinian protesters. And so that's why I clicked it, because I'm, you know, everything is about Palestine right now. So I clicked it, and it's about police. Boohooing, a boohoo segment for the police. That's essentially what this segment is. But I guess it was brought up because of Palestinian protests, because they showed the video where the protests at this particular location, they were calling, or they were saying KKK, IDF, Israel Defense Forces, and the police are all the same. And I guess it really shocked them. I don't understand why that shocks people, considering the history and the genesis of the police in the United States. They literally were slave catchers. So comparing them to the KKK, why is that so far removed to you in your mind? Unless you are trying to push the propaganda narrative that cops are here for our good. You know, starting with saying all the same talking points they always say. It's a dangerous job. Is it? Because I mainly see police harassing protesters, giving out tickets, harassing taxpayers. That's what I mainly see police doing. But what's up, everybody? I haven't been here in a while. I took a week off. I was a little burnt out. Believe it or not, I'm normally the guy behind the camera. And being that it was a pandemic, and the shoot that I was on a video shoot for a series. No, this was a series. It's called Fantastic Felines of South Bay. And it was about a flag football league of women, a women's flag football league, but the league happened to be made up of people who all went to the same school. So anyway, we were shooting that, and director, I'm behind the scenes. I'm not acting at all. There's 50 actors on the shoot. I'm behind the scenes. So when the pandemic came and the shoot was forced to close, we were on our 3rd or 4th day shooting, and the shoot was forced to close for the pandemic. Everybody had to quarantine, and that's why I began to do this in front of the camera. So I began to do this in front of the camera just because I was locked into my house. Yeah, just because I was locked into my house. So typically I'm behind the scenes. So this break was very needed for me because I'm typically behind the scenes doing sort of operational work. But then to have the job of also being in front of the camera has been kind of overwhelming. So I might take these breaks more frequently, or I might actually start streaming a lot less. This is why I'm trying to build a team on RBN Long Beach of podcast shows. We got 3 shows already. 2 premiered already. Another one premieres Thursday. So we got a Tuesday, Thursday, and a Sunday show right now. And then, of course, my show will be throughout. But yeah, so yeah, we're building out that, and I'm working on finally get back to my filming stuff, and I'm going to be working on some political comedy to bring to you guys. I'm hoping to work with Due Dissonance because they actually have a background in theater. So we're going to have a meeting, and I'm going to talk to them about this project idea I have. So that's another thing. So I was just finally able to do things that I normally would be doing. That was refreshing to be able to get back into my regular space that I'm typically in. So very refreshing, but I'm back, and I'm covering all the stories. Now, when I was taking this break, I'm collecting stories now. I'm not just letting stories fly by. I'm collecting, oh, that looks interesting, save it. And then yesterday I went through all of them. It was something like 21 stories. And I decided to keep 17. I'm going to cover, so I'm going to be streaming a lot this week. We're going to have guests, like hopefully Scott Ritter will confirm in talks, but just confirming the time and day, make sure it's available. Scott Ritter this week, Margaret Kimberly this week, Shama Sawant this week. I'm missing somebody. Glenn Greenwald this week. So I was out a week, but I'm coming back with a vengeance. Again, Glenn Greenwald, Margaret Kimberly, Shama Sawant, hopefully Scott Ritter will confirm, or will be able to confirm. He said he'll let us know tomorrow. And then hopefully some other people. So make sure you're watching. Make sure you stay tuned. Make sure if you're not on our Substack, get on our Substack. Here's the Substack link down at the bottom. If you're not on our Substack, get on our Substack. Because we're going to be doing a lot of content. Nick keeps saying is getting closer and closer to when he's going to begin writing on the Substack, and I'm also going to be doing some dabbling in some writing. JB also mentioned it, and I'm sure Sabby will do some too. So that's coming. So get on our Substack if you want to be abreast of all of that. Here's our email. And I'm showing you my email, or our email, because we need some producers. So, but this is a volunteer. So I'm asking if you're interested in volunteer to be a producer, and maybe we'll get a team, like 3 or 4 people. So it's, everybody's doing like one show a week. But if we can get a team of producers, and all you're doing is sitting back here, you're putting up the scrolling ticker, you're looking through the comments and all of that thing, all those things, just making sure the show runs smoothly. You might be putting together articles, stuff like that. So if you're interested in volunteering as a producer, give us a email shout out in the subject line. Make sure you put producer or podcast producer. Make sure you reference that. You saw this in a CJ stream, so Zoya knows who the email is for. So yeah, Zoya watches our email. Shout out to Zoya. If you're in the chat, she's the one that's booking all of our guests also. So yeah, we just need a little more help in the producer side of things if you're interested in that. Also, if you're interested in administrative, we could use somebody to put together a newsletter. So I mean, it's sort of an easy job, but just newsletter of things that we would tell you to put as this week. Maybe we'll do a weekly newsletter of information, links to our shows that week and different things. So either one of those, so producer or administrative, if you're interested in administrative, put in the subject line administrative so we know in there. So the other thing, the best way to support RBN, and by way of RBN, that is our editor Erin, who you see doing all the clips and the thumbnails, and she's had a family situation that she's still dealing with, so she's just kind of helping us, not pulling her, doing the must work she usually do, but she's still able to help us. But if you're able to subscribe to us as a member, and I believe the lowest plan is $3 a month, if you're able to afford that, that's the best way to support us and Erin. We may be doing a fundraiser for her, but we are doing a Christmas fundraiser. All RBN chapters will be doing this fundraiser to do something at our local chapters in the community. So join Patreon for that. Also, all right. So I think I've gotten through all of the sort of announcements. Now let's get into the topics. You see here, Christiane, I think that's our Christiane Amanpour, I think that's how you say her name. We're going to cover a video of her interviewing an Israeli official or ex-official, and she's surprised when the official admits something on camera, and that is they're the ones that built the tunnels. Israel built those tunnels. That's why they keep saying there. That's how they know it's there for sure. And then as we move from left to right, you see Al Sharpton and Eric Adams. Eric Adams is under investigation, sexual assault from the 1993 case or incident, and allegation that is. And we're going to cover how Al Sharpton is covering for him and how they have a long history together, which I did not know. And then there's an interview Mia, Khalifa, and Abby Martin has that we're going to start with. That's actually we're going to start with. We're going to be covering. And then there's an interesting segment that Joanne Reid did on the Readout where she has on State Department people, but they're talking about colonization as if they're radical professors at a college. So we'll cover that. And then this other interesting story, that's Hill Harper there on the far right. I'll bring that down. Hill Harper admitting in a tweet that, yes, I wasn't going to put this out there, but yes, I was offered by somebody $20 million to unseat Rashida Tlaib over this Palestine stuff. So we'll cover all of that today. Those are stories I'm for sure going to be able to get to. Others I might be able to jump on if I have more time. But we're going to do this all in the next 2 hours. So 4 p.m. is when I'm looking to end the stream. So just to give you a heads up. Love this clip, but let's go ahead now and bring up or move to our first topic, and that is going, or our first segment, that's a better way of saying it. And that is Abby Martin interviewing. In the video, Abby refers to her as Sarah. So I believe her given name, her real name, not her stage name, is Sarah, is what I'm going to assume. But Mia is her stage name that we're going to be covering Mia here. So if you can see, look at all these topics. Can you see? Yeah, you can see my book, excuse me, my bookmarks. And you can see I put, where is it? Just next week. So all last week, I would just put in a bunch of stuff and I went through all of this and created all of these topics I got. And now we're covering these ones with the plus sign. So let's get into this one here. And that's Mia or Maya, whichever pronunciation. Khalifa and Abby Martin speak. But we're gonna actually no, let's listen to the actual video instead of listening to the clip and then going to the video. I am gonna jump around. It is a long interview, it's an hour long, but we're only gonna cover maybe 10 minutes of it combined. So we're not gonna cover an hour, just so you know. But yeah, this was a very interesting interview. I'm so happy Abby is back. The Empire Files have been like on a hiatus for a while. I want to say over a year. Yeah, I want to say over a year, maybe 2 years. They've been on a hiatus and not producing anything, at least not on YouTube until now. This Palestine thing has gotten her back in front of the podcast camera and doing these interviews. She did one with Roger Waters. She did this one. And then another person, I want to pronounce her name wrong, but she's like the heir of some riches. But anyway, let's get into this. Let's hit that like button. Let's get it to 250 likes. 250 likes, that's the target, and we can get there easily if everybody hit that like button. But let's get into this video or this conversation that she's having with Mia. Where am I here? Oh, I got this open in so many places. I think I'm going to fast forward, and then we're going to come back to the beginning. But I want to start around somewhere around here. It was in a 20 mark. Yeah, we'll start right around here. And then we'll skip around to different parts. So let's listen.
Oh my gosh. And all of the propaganda videos of Israeli actresses pretending to be Palestinian nurses in perfectly clean gear.
So let me preface this section, because I do know this section. Let me preface this section better. This is where they're talking about the ridiculous cartoonish level propaganda that's coming from Israel. Like, it's like, and Nick and I have said this many times, it's so absurd, outrageously bad. And we're going to be covering another TikTok video that kind of parodies this ridiculous propaganda, but this is what she's referring to. That is Mia, but let's listen here.
Astounding. It's the anti-Arab racism. I mean, that's why they can get away with holding up a calendar and saying this is the schedule for who has to watch the hostages, when it's just a calendar. They see little squiggles on a piece of paper going from left to right, and then immediately it's a terrorist manifesto. It's a calendar. It reads the days of the week in Arabic.
What let me pause it here, because I'm curious to know, what is the guy who's pointing there? Let me see if I can. Where is it? Let's go back right here and see if it'll play.
On a piece of paper going from left to right, and then immediately it's a terrorist manifesto. It's fast. And we just sit back. I mean, the dehumanization and anti-Arab race.
So, what I was going to say, and once it gets there, I'll pause it. What I was going to say, let me pause the volume. What I was going to say is that I'm interested in knowing the guy who's pointing, the guy who's there in person with the calendar. Like, what's in your head about that? Now, I'm assuming these soldiers that they're being sent in or in these areas maybe speak multiple languages, and they will be able to read this. So I'm wondering, what is he thinking? Is he thinking, I don't understand what this says? Or if he has the ability to say this says this, that means it doesn't say that. So are you thinking, are you teaming up with the camera person and saying, I'm fooling the camera person too, and then all the millions of people watching? Or are you and the camera person going, yeah, let's fool these people? That's the dynamic that I'm curious about. But let's get back to the video.
In Arabic. It's oh my gosh. And all of the propaganda videos of Israeli actresses pretending to be Palestinian nurses in perfectly clean gear, in terrible Arabic accents, absolutely awful Arabic accents that you can hear the Hebrew through. It's really, really embarrassing for them, but at the same time, it's working on some people, not the general public, but it's sticking with some people, and that's what they're hoping for. They're hoping to catch the people who are not willing to do their own research or not willing to look past.
So this is beautiful what Sarah, aka Maya, points out right here. It's the same thing that Nick and I point out, is that propagandists and the design of propaganda is not to fool everybody. It's not even to fool necessarily, in our case, United States, it is already, but necessarily it's not even to fool the majority. It's just to fool just enough people. And to her point, it's to fool the people, because propaganda only works on the people who don't have all the information. This is why all of this Fox News, CNN, MSNBC propaganda about the pro-Palestinian protests is not going to work on the protesters. Like, your propaganda about it is not going to stop protesters from going out, because the people who are in the streets are the people who have the most knowledge on the subject. You know what I'm saying? So she is making a great point here, and that is Mia. Let's continue. Oops, did I hit the button? I didn't.
Past whatever headline they see first, whatever the most salacious thing comes up first on their timeline that they run with as fact and true. Like the people who ran with the 40 beheaded babies and the mass rapes and lighting people's homes.
They're still saying that. Literally, Morning Joe literally still, when they pull off their list of things, you know, they're raping this, they're doing that, beheaded babies is still there. So even though it's been debunked, proven to be made up, or proven not to have any factual evidence to prove this, they just continue to say it. But let's continue with Mia.
People's homes on fire while they're still in them. The people who ran with that have no prior knowledge of anything that's happened in the last 75 years, which is why they think that it was in a completely unprovoked attack. It was not an unprovoked attack. It was the manifestation of 75 years of occupation, of 16, 20 years of living in an open air prison. When was the wall built? Like 2003, 2004? Like it was built for a reason, and Israel left Gaza for a reason, but they have trapped them in this open air prison for what do you expect to happen? Do you expect people to just lay down and die? That's what they're hoping for right now. They're hoping people will just lay down and die and move into the Sinai and emigrate to all parts of the world and be thankful that they still get to live. They do not understand that no one is willing to do that. These doctors are not willing to leave their hospitals. They're willing to die on the ground that they were born on.
It's sick. And if I were Israeli, if I were Jewish, I would blame the root of all of this, which is the occupation and the siege. And for people to say, oh, we gave them Gaza, like I heard Israelis tell me this back in 2016, we gave them Gaza. They should be happy that we gave them Gaza. And also Israel just pretends that Gaza is some autonomous region that has its own army and that it's like somehow a war between states. Doesn't anyone sit back and think, how is it that Israel can cut off electricity and aid and fuel if they're not completely occupying Gaza from the outside? It's just so stupid and illogical.
Exactly. And that's another thing that really bothers me about it being called a war. You don't control every single resource that goes in and out of a country you're waging a war on. Also, you have to wage a war on a country. They're not waging a war on a country. They're waging a war on an occupied group of people in the most densely packed area in the entire world and starving them to death and forcing dehydration on them and innocent children and innocent people. And they're calling the people who are refusing to leave their houses, they're insinuating that they're there to fight or that they're there as a part of a terrorist organization, when in reality, they are a prideful group of people who would rather die in their homes than die in a refugee camp that's even more dangerous and overpopulated and crowded. It's really
I think that and I think I'm gonna stop here. Go and watch the full version over on the Empire Files YouTube page. I mean, stop here and I'm going to rewind a little bit, but you can watch the full version in its, chronological order, because I'm just going to skip to a different part here in a second, on your own. But what she's speaking to here, and let me refresh our memories here. 1 second.
Packed area in the entire world and starving them to death and forcing dehydration on them and innocent children and innocent people. And they're calling the people who are refusing to leave their houses, they're insinuating that they're there to fight, or that they're there as a part of a terrorist organization, when in reality they are a prideful group of people who would rather die in their homes than die.
So this is, and I'm glad I listened to it again to clarify, because I wasn't going to say it this way the first time. So if you're, it is the epitome, not epitome, it is just the illustration of a people, or as an expression of a people who they don't understand a Palestinian who is given the opportunity to leave, not leaving and saying, I will die on my land. They don't get that because they're not indigenous to the land. It's a very hard thing to understand when you're propping up white supremacy, white power structure. Everything has a price, but when you come upon people like Palestinians and say, I'm not leaving, then you have to say you're down with Hamas, because it's a complete lack of ability to relate to that, to somebody saying, I will die on this soil. I think that's just very telling, but let me rewind it now. Earlier in the interview, they get over the niceties right about here. Let's listen.
They posted a photo of her and her friends with signs saying, we stand with Gaza and calling for a ceasefire. And there was like a little toy octopus in the background, and it just spiraled out into like the octopus is an anti-Semitic trope, and oh, what is Greta Thunberg trying to say about this? It's like, I'm pretty sure that was just a completely harmless, like, toy stuffed animal in the background of this photo. But it's just like, it's mind blowing because it's so desperate. It's so desperate to twist the narrative and to deflect from what they're actually doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hear it simply in the way they speak. Like when Netanyahu is doing interviews in the West, like with CNN or something, the way that they try and drive in the propaganda into everything they say, like Hamas doesn't leave their mouth without and they are just like ISIS, immediately following it. Like it's insane. It's insane that they're, number one, given a platform like a news organization like CNN, but number two, that they assume that the general public isn't immune to the propaganda. Like we've seen it with Trump. We know what it's like to generate hysteria over things that are completely factless, completely untrue.
That's a great
based
point.
On just lies, just hoping that it sticks into a couple minds, because once it sticks into a couple minds, it's going to spread in those communities, and that's all that they can hope for. But I can't remember who it was, but I heard I saw a transcript of some leaked audio of someone saying that it's not a left and someone on the Israeli side saying it's not a left and right
Jonathan
divide.
Black.
It's a young and old. The younger generation is catching on to everything, and we need to do everything we can to stop that. And TikTok was mentioned, and all of these platforms that are used to spread awareness and shine light on all of this. They're terrified of these things.
It was Jonathan Greenblatt of the Anti-Defamation League, and it was a leaked audio recording where he actually said, quote, "We have a major generational problem. All of the polling I've seen suggests it's not a left-right gap. The issue is young and old." And I think that really, it strikes to the heart of the problem, because Israel's losing hold of the narrative that they've been they've maintained the narrative for so long because of the collusion with the press. I mean, they're a junior collaborator of the U.S. empire. They work in concert with the U.S. corporate media. I mean, so the U.S. corporate media.
I'm going to pause Abby right here because I do, as a receipt, want to bring up that video that they're referring to with Jonathan Greenblatt. I don't know if I said his name right earlier. At one of those moments where I'm like, wait, did I say his name right the first time? But Jonathan Greenblatt, and I did a segment on this before I went. Let me pause it. I did a segment on this before I went on the week break, but let's listen to what she's referring to. This is what Mia is referring to. I heard when she says, I heard a video where they're admitting this is not working or they're losing the narrative. So let's listen.
But I also want to point out that we have a major generational problem. All the polling I've seen, ADL's polling, ICC's polling, independent polling, suggests this is not a left-right gap, folks. The issue in the United States of support for Israel is not left and right. It is young and old. And the numbers of young people who think that Hamas's, massacre was justified is shockingly and terrifyingly high. And so we really have a TikTok problem, a Gen Z problem, that our community needs to put the same brains that gave us Taglit, the same brains that gave us all these other amazing innovations, need to put our energy toward this, fast. Because again, we've been chasing this left-right divide. It's the wrong game. The real game is the next generation, and the Hamas and their accomplices, the useful idiots in the West, are falling in line in ways that are terrifying. Last thing I'll just say, we saw a dramatic change in the language of the activists here in America on October the 8th. The language of groups that we've long tracked, who've long been problematic, like Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voices for Peace, they flipped like this and went to Iranian propaganda. The language I could show you from their toolkits, because our analysts are in their groups. We saw this again on October the 8th. It was that fast. The language in their toolkits was all about the Zionist entity and lots of other language that we recognized from Iranian propaganda. We think there's something more to this that's below the waterline. It's the young generation we need to be focusing energy on. There's something happening with Iran and how it's now their propaganda and their language and their tactics seem to be bleeding into the American kind of activist space in ways that are very different than NIAC and very, very problematic.
Yeah, so this is the video that I keep saying Maya, and I keep saying both because I don't know which way she pronounces it. I absolutely know multiple people with this name, and it's different pronunciations similar to Tara and Tara. We know Tara Reid, and I know another one I went to high school with, Tara, and she goes and spelled the same exact way. But anyway, that's the video from what Maya is referring to here. Now let's get back to the conversation. We're almost done here, and we're going to move on to the next story. So let's continue.
Generational problem. All of the polling I've seen suggests it's not a left-right gap. The issue is young and.
My bad, everybody. I did not go back far enough. Let's go there.
Forms that are used to spread awareness and shine light on all of this. They're terrified of these things.
It was Jonathan Greenblatt of the Anti-Defamation League, and it was a leaked audio recording where he actually said, quote, "We have a major generational problem. All of the polling I've seen suggests it's not a left-right gap. The issue is young and old." And I think that really, it strikes to the heart of the problem because Israel's losing hold of the narrative that they've been, they've maintained the narrative for so long because of the collusion with the press. I mean, they're a junior collaborator of the U.S. empire. They work in concert with the U.S. corporate media. I mean, so the U.S. corporate media, like all allies of the U.S. empire, they just basically run press releases from the IDF, and they're just their media stenographers. And so for the longest time, up until the advent of social media, Israel's just been able to have this stronghold on like what the talking points are. But as you've seen Palestinians dictate their own reality, that's slipping away more and more. And they are so desperate. I mean, we know that they have war rooms at Tel Aviv University with dozens, probably hundreds, if not thousands of people who are literally employed to correct the record online, whether it's Wikipedia or whatever. We know that Israeli officials try to take down pro-Palestine posts on TikTok and Twitter, but it still isn't working, Sarah. I mean, because Palestinians are showing us real time, like, these are the atrocities. This is our life. You can't argue with that. Like, but of course they try, right? They're even grotesquely insinuating that these people are all like working as actors and all the the dead babies are like toys. And I mean, it's fucking sick.
It's truly dystopian. It makes you feel like, are we living in the same world? Like, how can someone like stand and say these things and perpetuate these things when we're seeing it with our own eyes? We're seeing the reality that is in Gaza, and we're seeing the reality that is in Tel Aviv and the rest of Israel. When it's not just Gaza that isn't safe. We haven't even touched on the West Bank and Israeli citizens who are of Palestinian descent being arrested in their homes simply for standing in solidarity with children who are being murdered in their own homes. It's lunatic.
It's twisted beyond belief. And I think that really strikes to the heart of why you are such a threat, because we're talking about, like, especially like Gen Z, you know, millennials, Gen Z, people know what the hell's going on. You look at even like polling for just support for Israel, it's exactly the same thing. And I don't think it's necessarily just distrust in corporate media, although I do think that has a huge role to play. I think that, you know, people who grew up, especially in a post 9/11 world, it's like that's just like the meme. It's like the media lies us into war over and over again. So why would you believe them now? But I think more importantly is that Israel's control over the narrative for so long. I mean, this goes back to the clash of civilizations. It goes back to just that idea that Arabs are terrorists. And it, of course, was cemented further with 9/11. It's always been a racist, dehumanizing trope that Israeli colonialism and U.S. imperialism has relied on to advance their goals in the Middle East. And this caricature is super successful, but it's waning, I think, in large part because Americans are like meeting Arabs more. Like, we're getting out of our comfort zone. There's a lot of, you know, diaspora of a lot of like refugees around the world. Like, a lot of people, their neighbors, their friends, their coworkers, like, they're meeting people and they're like, oh, this isn't what I've been told by the media forever. And of course, social media, like, kids who are following you, all of these kids who are following like iconic, powerful, influential, popular Arab people, whether it's musicians or artists or just like fashion icons. I mean, that's dispelling the myth real time as well. And you can't propagandize to people who are like young, because they're seeing it for themselves and they're just following these people themselves instead of like what old people are telling them who to hate.
Yeah, like Barry, aka Obama, said, the internet really is fucking up freedom to them because they don't have the ability to control the narrative. It's just literally you can't. We have the ability to talk to people. Like, I remember when I was in college, freshman year, what is it? AIM? Instant messaging was real popular. Chatting with people in Germany and chatting with people in Italy, chatting people in Kenya, like all around the world. A Kenyan can tell me directly what's happening. I don't need the news to tell me. You know what I'm saying? Like, a German the German person I know can tell me directly what's happening. I don't need the news, and it's a person I would have more trust in since I'm following them. And this is something that they didn't plan for. I'm sure capitalists thought of this internet idea. You know, the internets. They thought of the idea, or when they heard it, I just saw a way of making money worldwide. They didn't understand. Wait a minute. The narrative, all the lies we tell our own citizens, and all countries tell their own citizens lies, but the lies we tell, somehow that's going to be broken. And we're seeing it, and you see it in the decline of cable news watch or viewership all the time. But we're gonna cut it there with Abby and Mia, or Maya, if that's how she pronounces it. Make sure you go check it out on Twitter. I'm sorry, on YouTube. You can go see it. Empire Files, and just search Abby Martin and Mia Khalifa, and you will find the video. So check it out. All right, let's get to the next item on the list, and I think I want to cover the TMZ video. So let me set it up. Let me make sure I have the item ready. Now, as we're waiting, make sure you hit that like button. I think we're going to bump our target up to 350 since we got more viewers than that. So our new target for likes is 350. So make sure you hit that like button to get us to that 350 goal of likes. Where is it at? I'm looking for it. I have a lot of these set up. Like I said, it's all of those segments to do. Wow, did I not do one? That's why I can't find it, because this is the one. I think 3 of them I wasn't able to set up. So TMZ, they actually destroy Joe Biden in this video. It's pretty good. So we're gonna watch it right now. I got the banner all set up. Everybody that's watching is gonna hit that like button and get us to 350. So thank you for that. But let's start here. Aaron, you can start here. Here is a case study QB video. Shout out to Case Study QB. Make sure you follow him on Twitter. He curated this video from TMZ talking about Joe Biden joining TikTok and how ridiculous that is, and just how him trying to reach young people may not be that successful just because of who he is and the track record of not listening to young people. So I think this is a great video. Let's listen, and it really gets better when the reporter they have comes on. So let's listen. Let's listen.
Check out the birthday celebration at the White House. It was not a 3-alarm fire, or at least one didn't break out. It looks like one is about to start based on the photo. This is the official photo they put out. So they did it as a joke. It's a joke, right? I mean, just pointing out that he's that old. It's interesting that they are leaning into it when so many people are saying that's his Achilles heel. You say leaning into it, yet hours before he tried referencing Taylor Swift concert and messed it up and said Britney Spears. So whether they're leaning in or not, it feels like they're whipsawing. Yeah, well, maybe their Hail Mary is going to be social media, because President Biden, although he has said in the past that he would not, is opening a TikTok account and a Threads account. So is Vice President Harris, also now has a Threads account. So maybe they feel like social media is the thing that's going to help them get the confidence.
It feels like they're laughing at him as they're reporting this.
It's slipping. So is it going to be enough? Well, let's bring in our good friend who is a tech reporter for the Washington Post, Taylor Lorenz. Welcome back to TMZ Live. Hey, Taylor.
Thank you for having me.
Taylor, I look. You know, if he is trying to lean in to young people, you just got to see the handwriting on the wall that young people, and you tell me if I'm wrong because I ain't a young person, but I follow what's going on, and it just seems to me that the age factor and just the visuals of Joe Biden almost make it a deal breaker, it seems, for an increasingly large number.
So they are starting to talk about what cable news refers to as his age only. Like it's just a number, it's one-dimensional. This corporate entity, which is not afraid of talking about Joe Biden, it's taught... Let me get the correct phrasing that he says here. I always like to do that. Let's get it his correct
breaker, it seems, for an increasingly large number of young people. So how does jumping on TikTok?
I think he says, I didn't rewind it further enough. He says something like, you can visually see him cognitively declining, like a visual difference, basically. You can see it. And so this is one of the first times a corporate entity, I've heard, maybe it's because they delve in entertainment, they're allowed to do this, but talk about Joe Biden's age, not in this one-dimensional sense of just a number, but the visual, visually seeing a difference. So just wanted to point out to that.
Top jumping on threads or anything like that. How can he win that back?
I don't see him winning it back with
Wow.
a Threads account or TikTok. He can post all day long. The fact is that his policies are enormously unpopular with young people. He has, failed to eliminate student debt. He has allowed, basically, pushed a lot of legislation that young people are really against. So he can TikTok all day. It doesn't matter. Young people will support an older candidate. I mean, a huge amount of young people, for instance, supported Bernie, who's very old himself.
Sure, yeah.
Because they felt, his policies aligned. Biden can't just ignore everything that Gen Z is asking for and then, do a little dance on TikTok and think that that's going to win him the election.
It actually is kind of insulting in a way, right? That they almost feel like manipulated. If they do something, if they feel like if they do something humorous, the administration, like the birthday cake photo, if they do something humorous, okay, we'll just make young people laugh, and that's all that they care about. If they laugh, then they'll support me.
And to his point, I'm amazed that they're saying this. Maybe I'm overly describing it, because I don't watch TMZ. Maybe they talk about politics like this all the time. But to hear a corporate outlet say, it's almost insulting that they think they can just pretty much tap dance and then you'll be okay. But they're saying it out loud, especially over this Palestine issue. They keep saying, oh, that's 11 months out. What does that mean? What does 11 months have to do with people not liking you committing genocide? And that's why your polling numbers are coming down. Because they're saying, oh, you'll forget about this. I would be highly offended as a Democratic voter if they did that to me. Like, wait, so you think something that I'm mad at right now, you're just saying, I'll see you in a month and you won't be so mad about this? Like, but that's what it feels like they're doing. Let's continue. It continues here with them destroying him.
That's seems to be the tone of what they're doing, right?
Yeah, it's just this gross dismissiveness of Gen Z voters and not taking their interests seriously. Young people care about things like climate change. They have a very different perspective on the war that's happening right now. They're very anti-war. There's all these issues: student debt, healthcare, housing, the rising cost of living. And what are they doing? They're posting these silly memes. Of course, that's not going to resonate. It's actually just going to alienate young voters who feel like they're being trivialized.
So explain then why Donald Trump is getting more and more younger voters behind him, because when you talk about climate change and you compare Biden and Trump, there's really no comparison. And there are issues, as you say, that resonate with young people that Donald Trump is not behind, yet he's growing in popularity with them.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, look, Trump's policies overwhelmingly do not align with young people. However, Trump is seen as very authentic. He speaks his mind. There's all of these things that I do think people like. And also there's just a hatred of Joe Biden because they feel so kind of
can't believe they're saying this stuff on here.
I've talked to a lot of young voters and they say, look, at least with Trump, we know what we're getting. Biden, on the other hand, promised all of these progressive changes and then flip-flopped and enacted a lot of the same policies as Trump, especially in regards to the border wall, things like this. So, I think it's
not looking good for him.
Turning to the right.
Taylor, when I was young, and the Vietnam War was raging, young people were passionate for certain candidates. I was a huge supporter and actually worked on the campaign, even when I was young, of Robert Kennedy. Yet I haven't seen any groundswell among young people the way I did back then, or the way we even saw with Bernie Sanders. I've seen no groundswell for any particular person. Why is that?
Well, I think we're in a position right now where there is no mainstream progressive left candidate. I mean, if you look at the political landscape, it's dominated by boomers. It's dominated by older people or maybe slightly younger people that really just promote the boomer ideology. And
Right.
so I think
Hakeem
a lot of young people are
Jeffries.
so hungry for that candidate that resonates with them, but nobody's speaking to young people. People are dismissing them. I mean, look at what happens when some of these young climate activists get up and challenge the administration. They're dismissed, they're maligned. So I think it's hard. I think young people really want someone to rally around, and the Democratic Party needs to make room for that next generation. They can't just have the same old establishment people that have been in power for so long clinging to power and expect that, Gen Z is going to come out and vote for them.
Oh, wow.
Like I said, I'm amazed that this segment is on here. Now, granted, it's not coming from the lips of the two regular hosts. It's coming from a reporter's lips. But again, like somebody said in the comments, they usually TMZ usually totes the normal establishment line, and this is sort of surprising to hear this. But I think it's because all of this critique of Joe Biden has already been green lit. It was green lit back in the day when David Ignatius wrote the article in the Washington Post saying Joe don't run. That was several months ago when we cover that. So you've seen a lot of this, and it's as the polls come out and show he's losing in battleground states. That was the whole thing. Joe Biden is the only one who could beat him. Remember they kept saying that? Joe Biden is the only one who could beat him. That's why we're not having a primary. Joe Biden this, Joe Biden that. And now that these polls are consistently showing him losing to Trump in battleground states, losing to multiple Democrats in battleground states, not just national. When they would be national polls, oh, he's winning us national poll. We don't have national elections. That was the response. They don't have that anymore. Now they're just saying we don't believe these polls, or they'll say, oh, it's 11 months from now. So love this segment. I think this is the end. Yeah, it's ending here. Let's let it end the last 30 seconds, and we can move on to the next story.
Wow, that is powerful. And I got to say, you make a lot of sense. It's a big problem that they need to address. The problem is, do they have enough time at this point, right, to flip it around? And it seems like, they're running out. Wow.
Yeah, they don't have much time, so they better get it together soon, and I don't think signing up for TikTok is going to solve these tough problems.
There's not or burning down the house burning down the White House with a birthday cake. Happy Thanksgiving, Taylor.
Yeah, so very interesting segment, I thought, on TMZ, and oddly enough, it was pretty, I wouldn't go as far as to say based. Didn't reach based level, but it's right below that. And if you're grading on a curve compared to other corporate media, I guess you can say that it was pretty based. But let's now get to our next topic. I'm just moving along. I think I'm gonna be able to put to squeeze in some other topics that I wasn't going to be able to squeeze in. But now I want to go to this video, and we're gonna call it Palestine-Israel conflict dividing the world. That's the topic of this segment that's on the readout. And now, actually, let me say this. So we are at over 400 people watching. Hit that like button. We should get to 350 very easily. That's our target, 350 likes. On YouTube, on Rumble, our target is 100 likes. Last time I checked, there was 125 people watching us over on Rumble. So close to 650 people watching us on all platforms, including Facebook, including Twitch. Make sure you hit the like button or the thumbs up on whatever platform you're watching the show. We can use roughly about another 100 more likes to get us to our target. But this next segment here was very surprising. So I'll say, let me put this title up. Read out. Now, why? Now, let me say this after I put this up. Now, segment. Because I wanted to include it. Aaron, you can start here. Now, what makes it's several reasons why this segment on the Readout with Joy and Reid on MSNBC is surprising. One, the topic being colonization, and it stems from what's happening in Palestine, but it's more of a general topic conversation, not specific to Palestine. And it talks about colonization, the devastation that colonization brings. That's surprising. But what's also surprising is who she decided to bring on to talk about these subjects. Now, if you had to make a list of the last people you would talk to about colonization, I think people from the State Department would be at the top of that list. Top 3. State Department person. Yet she brings on 2 State Department officials, and one of them is not only a State Department official, but he's ex-CIA director. This is a very unusual segment to bring on 2 State Departments, but it's still a base segment. Let's watch.
This conflict between Israel and Gaza has divided not just the region, but the entire world. And we're seeing a stark contrast in just how different world leaders are responding to the conflict. President Biden, in an op-ed this weekend in the Washington Post, doubled down on his full support for Israel and his opposition to a ceasefire, even as Israel's ground assault in the Gaza Strip continued, with forces entering a second hospital and with the death toll in Gaza now topping 13,000. Biden's stance places him at odds with parts of his own coalition at home, and with the French president and Irish leaders, and with many non-European nations who are echoing the ceasefire calls that we're seeing on American campuses in protests and from groups like Jewish Voice for Peace. The president of South Africa last week filed a referral to the International Criminal Court for an investigation into what he calls war crimes being committed by Israel in Gaza. This conflict highlights what has been a growing rift between what's called the global South and the West, whose post-World War II order, led by the U.S., has largely produced wealth and political stability for Europe, with obvious huge exceptions like Ukraine, but that for over a century has delivered colonialism, slavery, and exploitation.
I mean, listen to that. Like, I was watching this, I was like, what did she say? I was very surprised. I'm going to rewind it so you can hear. If you didn't catch, this is amazing to me. Let's listen.
In Gaza, now topping 13,000. Biden's stance places him at odds with parts of his own coalition at home, and with the French president and Irish leaders, and with many non-European nations who are echoing the ceasefire calls that we're seeing on American campuses in protests and from groups like Jewish Voice for Peace. The president of South Africa last week filed a referral to the International Criminal Court for an investigation into what he calls war crimes being committed by Israel in Gaza. This conflict highlights what has been a growing rift between what's called the global South and the West, whose post-World War II order, led by the U.S., has largely produced wealth.
Post-World War II order has largely produced wealth. And saying that we are at odds with the global South. This is some amazing, at least virtue signaling analysis. Let's continue.
And political stability for Europe, with obvious huge exceptions like Ukraine, but that for over a century has delivered colonialism, slavery, and exploitation for resource-rich but economically poor developing.
Listen to what she's saying. Resource-rich but economically underdeveloped poor countries. How is that possible? Who has the resources, Joanne? Where did the resources go? This is amazing to me.
Colonialism, slavery, and exploitation for resource-rich but economically poor developing countries in what we used to call the third world, particularly in Africa, whose countries have faced constant wars, coups, and political unrest. But in just a matter of years, they are expected to be a major global powerhouse. As the New York Times writes, the population there is projected to nearly double to.
So if you're hearing this for the first time, I began to read about this maybe early last year. And this is from the New York Times. They just wrote this a couple of about a month ago yesterday. The headline is "The World is Becoming More African." And let me read what it says here. Astonishing change is underway in Africa, where the population is projected to nearly double to 2.5 billion over the next quarter century, 25 years. An era that will not only transform many African countries, experts say, but also radically reshape their relationship with the rest of the world. What she's saying is they're not going to be the subordinate class, the subordinate continent, the people just laying down, handing over their resources while they starve. That era is over or coming to an end, and that's what they mean by also radically reshape their relationship with the rest of the world. The relationship now is exploitation. But let's continue with the segment.
To 2.5 billion over the next quarter century, an era that will not only transform many African countries, experts say, but also radically reshape their relationship with the rest of the world. Joining me now is Nayyirah Haq, former senior advisor for the State Department, former White House senior director and MSNBC columnist, and John Brennan, former CIA director and MSNBC senior national security analyst. Thank you both for being here. Nayyirah, it is a shifting world. And the Israel conflict, I think, it didn't start it. It just highlights it, because there definitely is a difference between the way the global South feels about the conflict and the way the U.S. and most of Europe, excepting the leaders of France and Ireland, feel about it. Talk a little bit about why that matters and how that will impact other issues.
So, talk about why that matters and why that impact. Ask yourself, why would Joy-Ann Reid have a discussion and ask this question to people who on paper would seemingly not have any background knowledge in this area? Why is there two ex-State Department people in this segment? And more importantly, why is there an ex-CIA director talking about colonialism? You mean to tell me Joy-Ann Reid never heard of Margaret Kimberly, Ajamu Baraka? Vijay Prasad? I mean, I could go on. Like, you haven't heard of scholars? I mean, even Cornel West. This is very. Thought this was very strange, but the information's based. It's almost like these are the guards to make sure the person in the middle stays within a particular talking point line, even if it's a base segment. That's what it feels like to me. Let's continue.
Issues that the U.S. has around the world.
So much of what we hear right now about the United States as a global power is falling on the ears of a generation that has grown up in the wake of 9/11, U.S. involvement in Iraq and Afghanistan, and that had devastating consequences for the Middle East and throughout the United States as well, whether it be civil rights or just a broader understanding of what it means to.
her call drops, and then they go to
It's
him.
frozen. Okay, we're gonna let the interwebs get themselves together. We love a little technical difficulty, so we're gonna let that work out. I'm gonna go to you, John Brennan. You know, when you know, my father was a young man growing up in the Democratic Republic of Congo, there was this sort of contest between Moscow and Washington over who was going to get the young men of the continent in these newly liberated countries that had been beset by colonialism. And, you know, what Belgium did to the Congo, 20 million people dead, lots of bad feelings with the West. But the West basically won the contest largely for young African men to come. Barack Obama's father, lots of people came to the United States, were educated here, and the West kind of was winning that war. Now it seems it's kind of going the other way. China recently welcomed Arab and Muslim foreign ministers on talks on ending the war in Gaza. This is the quote from the Associated Press today. China's top diplomat welcomed the ministers from Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, the Palestinian Authority, and Indonesia to Beijing, saying his country would work with our brothers and sisters in the Arab and Islamic world to try to end the war in Gaza as soon as possible. You've had Chinese and Russian officials visiting African nations, cultivating relationships. You've had a real resistance to jumping on board the pro-Ukraine stance in lots of African nations. And now the same thing is happening with more African nations siding with Gaza. Is the U.S. becoming isolated from this global South, which is going to represent a huge portion of the economy in the coming years?
That is an astonishing question. In particular, to be asking a CIA director, is the United States becoming isolated? And I think that question sort of speaks to why there is State Department people in this segment. Let's continue and see what the answer is.
Well, I think, as you point out, Joy, there is growing sentiment in the third world, in the developing world, that there is this concern that the United States and the West has been exploiting these countries for many, many years. And now, unfortunately, given that we have seen for the past 6+ weeks in Gaza, the continued civilian deaths that have taken place as a result of Israeli strikes, I think it's generating a lot of sympathy, empathy for the Palestinian people who have been on their own quest for nationhood and statehood. So I think a lot of people, especially in Africa, that have had to struggle for decades in the past number of years for their own statehood, they can relate to that.
Struggle against who? Ex-CIA director? Struggle against who? Who are they struggling against? These African nations that you're talking about. It's like he's talking about somebody else. Because he can't say the government, he's part of it. He should be saying we. I'll rewind it slightly to get the entirety of what he's saying here in this last part and let it continue.
Who have been on their own quest for nationhood and statehood. So I think a lot of people, especially in Africa, that have had to struggle for decades in the past number of years for their own statehood, they can relate to that. But I do think that they see this, the bloodshed, the pain, the suffering of individuals, and they see it at the hands, quite frankly, of an advanced country such as Israel that is supported and backed by the West. Israel is advanced economically, technologically, a big, powerful military against the Palestinian people. So I think it's being seen through that prism that this is something that, again, the West is responsible for. And there's not the same understanding of the years of conflict that really have, I think, beset this part of the world.
When he says it's not the same understanding, he's saying they don't buy the bullshit narrative that the United States have been pushing. That's what that means. It's not the same understanding. They do not buy our lies like our citizens do. This is a great
and
segment.
also in the case of Africa specifically, this is a very young population. It's the youngest population of all of the world, and 1 in 4 very soon humans on the earth are going to be African, and these are young people. Is part of the issue here.
1 in 4 humans on the planet will be African. That's what they mean by the future is African. This is the change. We are, because there has to be a ramp up to this sort of African liberation that is on the horizon. Economic liberation, resource stealing liberation. But yeah, I don't want to go on a tangent. Let's stay here so we can get through this.
Here that there is this sort of new understanding. There's a growing sort of Pan-Africanism on the continent, and a growing understanding of the past in a new way of saying, you know what, this colonial history, we want to now address it. And there's a lot of anger at Europe and the West, right? A lot of anger at France, a lot of anger at the United States.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it is understandable given their history, but also I think this is a reflection of the.
Is he a black studies teacher at Morehouse College, or is he the ex-CIA director here? I didn't know. I think, is this Brennan? I didn't know this guy. Yeah, John Brennan. I didn't know he was a well-versed radical on oppression and colonialism. It's amazing. So it speaks to them. They know, yet they still do wrong.
You know what, this colonial history, we want to now address it. And there's a lot of anger at Europe and the West, right? A lot of anger at France, a lot of anger at the United States.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it is understandable given their history, but also I think this is a reflection of the world that we live in right now in terms of just the availability of the communication system, social media, the fact that they can turn
the internets
on TV and look at what's happening in a real-time way. And so therefore, particularly the younger generations who are very technically savvy, they have their cell phones no matter where they are throughout Africa or the rest of the developing world. They see what is happening there, and there is this resentment about the West. It's basically the struggle between the haves and the have-nots. And I think there's just natural sympathy for those individuals who may, in fact, be similarly oppressed, or what they view to be oppressed by the West. And
I feel like this is a Mission Impossible psyop, and John Brennan is going to go and pull one of those Mission Impossible and just rip his mask off, and it's like Tom Cruise underneath. Who is this guy? Who is this guy that sounds like a ethnic studies professor? Amazing. I gotta hear what he says. This last point he makes again. Let me play it and I'll let it play through.
Real-time way. And so therefore, particularly the younger generations who are very technically savvy, they have their cell phones no matter where they are throughout Africa or the rest of the developing world. They see what is happening there, and there is this resentment about the West. It's basically the struggle between the haves and the have-nots. And I think there's just natural sympathy for those individuals who may, in fact, be similarly oppressed, or what they view to be oppressed by the West. And given that the United States is such a staunch supporter of Israel, they tend to identify the United States with what is happening in Gaza. And I think that is...
they're a strong supporter. So... if there was a slave owner and there was another person who wasn't a slave owner, and that other person wasn't a slave owner, had a lot of money, I don't own slaves, I'm good, I'm the good ones, I don't own any slaves, but they're handing hundreds of thousands of dollars to their neighbor that's a slave owner, we're not supposed to get mad at him? That's what's supposed to happen, John Brennan? You're supporting apartheid. You're supporting genocide financially with the weapons and the bombs that they're using to kill people, children, women, men. It's from our money. Our taxpayer money has blood on it. I am just so amazed that this is an ex-CIA director saying this.
Similarly oppressed, or what they view to be oppressed by the West. And given that the United States is such a staunch supporter of Israel, they tend to identify the United States with what is happening in Gaza. And I think that is unfortunate in terms of attributing some of this violence or bloodshed to the United States.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't know that for a very, very long time, the South African, the African National Congress, et cetera, have always been sort of have been very identified with the Palestinian movement, freedom movement. I have Naira back. Look, the Gremlins have released her. Naira, let's talk about, I think one of the big issues that I've seen people talk about is the coltan issue in Democratic Republic of Congo, what people call a slow motion genocide, the fact that the resources under the feet of people in Africa are riches. They sort of describe the Africa sort of all.
Yeah, these two were absolutely here to be as the guardrails for this conversation. It's so bizarre to have these people on. I gotta say it again because she's about to answer this question. It's so bizarre that this dynamic happened with these two.
It's all Wakanda. They've all got gold and coltan and oil and everything else, but they don't profit from it. The West relies on it, sucks those resources out, and becomes super rich. They get really nothing for it. And so how does that end up getting rebalanced? Can the West rebalance this relationship and allow these countries to profit more from their own resources in a way that makes things more equal?
How about you just give them their shit? You hear in the question, she's saying, yes, we've been exploiting them. How do we make our exploitation a little bit better, a little more equal?
And should they do it? Because it seems that they're definitely losing the hearts and minds.
Well, we're talking about the entire colonial structure, right? And what's been left afterwards, in which colonialists, mostly the West, some of what we now see as Spain and Hispanic, but also part of this colonial project, that they went into countries, they took over, they also raised up a group of indigenous people to be the effective overseers. That's who's left in charge of many of these countries, whether it be Afghanistan or the Congo. And so you now have this power class that is deeply corrupt, is also deeply invested in benefiting personally from the extraction. And we don't have an international regime that is good at addressing that.
So her answer to the United States and the West extracting resources is that there's sellouts that are selling it to us. Those people are the problem. So when you thought she was going to give a based answer, she said, no, thank you.
So, we talk about democracy and how expanding democracy will bring human rights to many countries. That's not the reality on the ground for many places, where democracy is also synonymous with massive corruption. If you look at global surveys, you see not only that the majority of the African continent is under the age of 25 years old, you also find that they are some of the people with the least resources and least access.
Yeah.
What? That she didn't address anything of the question at all. On purpose, of course, but let's.
This is a very interesting, important conversation. I want to keep having it, and so I'm glad we got a chance to get it started tonight. Naira, thank you. I'm glad you were released from the spell of the demons of technology. Thank you. I'm glad you were here, and Director John Brennan. Thank you both.
I can't believe John Brennan. John Brennan is now preaching radical colonialism and the effects of it. Amazing. I'm waiting to find out what's behind this. I don't know what it is right now, but I'm waiting to find out what's behind this. Here's a super chat. Freddie the Fish, thank you for the super chat. Don't be surprised when DNC runs Michelle for POTUS. If Michelle Obama runs, Michelle Obama will win. If Michelle Obama runs, Michelle Obama will win. That's probably, to me, the only person, one of the few people that would beat Donald Trump on the blue side. Wealth for whom? Exactly. Wealth from whom? You saw they had a base analysis, but the base analysis was still missing words like the United States caused this shit. It was still missing phrases like that. So, but thank you, Sam, for that super chat. Let's move to the next story. Just moving along here. I got so many stories that I show you guys. What do I have? Look at all these. All of these stories I have just since I've been gone. But let's go to my next one. And my next one is Eric Adams. We're going to go to. Now, for this Eric Adams story, what I want to do is I want to bring up something else. 1 second here. Because it's a story about what's happening to him with this case, but it's also a story about the unusual relationship between Al Sharpton, supposedly this Black community activist, and this Black police officer who's now the mayor. They have a long history, and that's probably why Al Sharpton is covering for him in the interview that I'm going to show you. He did an interview, brings him on his show, and basically, I mean, it's a softball interview, talks about it for a few minutes, and then moves on to something else. But let's get into this. I'm going to read one more comment here. Hang on 1 second. Let's see. One more comment. Oh, actually, no, that's not a super chat. I meant to say super chat. I was going to read one more super chat, but that is not. I thought it was a super chat that came in. Let me check Rumble to make sure Rumble. I don't see any Rumble rants. All right, so we're going to get into the story, but actually, let's get into it right now. So, Aaron, you can start right here. So here's another segment on the Negro servant, and this is another Negro servant spotlight. We do these, and we also do the war criminal spotlight, where we just spotlight a story about a war criminal. We have many of them, just as we have many Negro servants. Stacey Abrams, even our vice president, Kamala Harris, Hakeem Jeffries, I can go on and on, Clyburn, and then we have these two here. So yes, this case has dropped. Yes, this case is of allegations of sexual assault. He says he doesn't recall. We're going to get to that in the interview. But this is where it started. This is why we're even talking about Eric Adams in this way, and Al Sharpton. But before we get to the video they have, let me play this here. Let me read this here. Eric Adams was once Al Sharpton's bodyguard. Now they talk weekly, and I'll add to this headline. And now Al Sharpton is shielding and covering for Eric Adams. And let's read a little bit of this story. In a little-known piece of New York City history, Eric Adams once served as Sharpton's bodyguard. There you see Eric right here to the right of the chubbier version of Al Sharpton. And just FYI, Al Sharpton was never considered like a serious person. He was kind of like the, forgive the expression, crackhead pipe version of a civil rights leader. It was not that person, is what I recall. And then years later, he is what he is today. So, but let's read a little bit here. Reverend Al Sharpton remembers first meeting Eric Adams, then a transit cop, at one of his rallies in the late 1980s after he cut ties with a group of civil rights leaders after they called Black police officers pigs. Al Sharpton cut ties with this group after they called cops pigs. They were unlikely allies brought together by shared rivalry. Quote, we backed into each other and then embraced, end quote. Sharpton said in an interview at his Midtown Manhattan office. They bonded, he said, quote, because we had the same adversaries in the Black activist community. Referring to leaders who called Black officers pigs and wanted to ban white people from their ranks. So Al sided against the Black activists. For decades, Sharpton and Adams, New York's second Black mayor, talked in text weekly. But despite that early enthusiastic hug, the revered is still reluctant to fully embrace Adams, largely because of the differences around public safety and the specter of another Eric Garner type police killing. Since Adams entered office in January 2022, Sharpton has not been to City Hall or Gracie Mansion. I'm going to get to this part. All right, I'll read this and then I'll get back to the video. While Sharpton is a national spokesperson for victims of police brutality, Adams is a retired police captain whose commitment to meaningful NYPD reforms is uncertain. Still, the futures of two of New York's most powerful leaders are intrinsically linked. Sharpton's support is crucial to the mayor winning a second term. Let me say that again. Sharpton's support is crucial to the mayor winning a second term, and Sharpton wants to avoid another Black mayor losing re-election, like how Rudy Giuliani soundly defeated incumbent David Dinkins, the city's first Black mayor, in 1993. So this is just a brief snippet of the history between these two before we get into this segment where he went on. And now the segment is like 8 minutes long, but they only talk about the issue for like 2 minutes. So even the segment they do is not too long, but we're going to watch it and analyze it and then talk about the charges that he has here. But let's watch it, and I'm going to get to those photos that I just skipped over. Don't worry, we're coming back to those pictures. I want to go to the video first before we go to those. Oops, 1 second here. Right here is where I'm going to watch it. So let's make it bigger. And let's watch.
Switching gears now, joining me is New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Mayor Adams, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
I want to get into the migrant situation and budget challenges, but I wanted to have you also to discuss a number of issues facing the city. But first, though I have to ask you about several items in the news related to you and to your administration. On Wednesday, a lawsuit was filed against you by a woman who says you sexually assaulted her while you both were working for the city in 1993. You said Thursday you don't recall even ever meeting the accuser. What more can you tell us about this case, if anything, and why it's being brought if, as you say, you didn't even know the person?
I don't know that, and I want to be clear. The law that was passed that allowed a look-back period of any form of action like this, I support the law. I think it should be used and not abused. I have no idea, why this was brought forth. I don't recall ever meeting this person. Over 30 years ago, this was stated, took place. And, people like you who know me, I have always fought on behalf of not only women specifically, but in general, uplifting people and protecting people. I protected people for 22 years as a police officer, and I know what it is to make sure that people should always receive the protection that they deserve. And we don't know the full scope of what this allegation is, but it's going to follow. It's the process, and I'm going to continue to do what I have to do to make sure the city navigates out of some challenging time.
Now, there's also the FBI campaign finance investigation. Federal authorities have this month raided the homes of your chief fundraiser as well as another aide and seized several of your electronic devices. The probe is reportedly looking at whether a Turkish consulate building may have been approved improperly. You said you are cooperating with investigators and haven't been accused of any wrongdoing. But for city residents who are concerned about corruption and who have read stories about your past trips to Turkey and have questions, what is your message to them right now, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I've been consistent on one thing, Reverend Sharpton.
What is this? This sounds like a PR event set up by the Eric Adams campaign. He's basically saying, do you have allegations against this? What is your message about that? Okay. You have your allegation about corruption. You have these allegations about corruption in your campaign. What is your message to that about that to your people? Okay, now let's move on to the other stuff. He's a reporter. Al, you're. Do you feel? Actually, let me let it play, and then I'm going to ask the question. Let me let it play.
Often to my team, number one, we participate in all investigation and we follow the law. We follow the rules. As I stated, as a former law enforcement person, I know what it is to follow the rules and follow the law. And I'm telling my team to do that. We want the same thing that the SDNY, the Southern District, wants, is to find out exactly what took place. And people point to the number of trips to Turkey. I traveled to Africa 7 or 8 times, South America, Central America, to China. New York City is an international city, and we have some of the largest population of the various diasporas of all of these various groups. And I try to make it clear that we're a welcoming city, and we want to have these international relationships. The United Nations sits in off the East River of this city, and that's the role I have as the mayor of the city of New York. So we're going to be as cooperative as possible to give any information that is needed. I continue to tell my team to cooperate and follow the rules and the law, and that's what we're doing.
Now, switching gears, I was honored to have you join us on Thursday at National Action Network's House of Justice in Harlem to serve.
These people have no shame whatsoever. No shame whatsoever. So, what type of interview were we to expect Al Sharpton was going to give to the guy he just had at his event? And to do it in the same segment on the same day is showing they don't give a fuck about what you think about what's going on. Oh, who do I have at my event, guys? There's some guy that's being accused of rape. That's all. That's it. That's wrong. What's wrong, guys? Like I said, I recall Al Sharpton being considered the dime store bag version of civil rights leader. He was never considered a real civil rights. He was considered like a what is the right word? A swindler. Like he was using civil rights as a way of making money. Not using civil rights as a way of accomplishing anything. He's not that person. Civil rights is a business to him. I could not believe this. Now I'll go to the pictures. This is why I didn't want to show you the pictures yet, because that very picture I'm going to show you in just a second here. I just could not believe this guy. In the same segment, the guy who's being accused of a civil lawsuit of sexual assault and has an investigation going on about campaign finance, you have it at your event. And you decide to cover all of those topics in one segment as if nobody would pay attention. But let's look at this headline here. New York City mayor accused of sexual assault in legal filing. The next picture you see, this is the same thing I showed you, Al Sharpton and Eric Adams, because he was his bodyguard. And let's go to, we already saw the Sabby. And let's go to some other pictures. Eric Adams was once Al Sharpton's bodyguard, and we start with that picture again. Then let's move to some other pictures. Eric Adams right here. Al Sharpton right there. Like I said, he's never been a civil rights person in the sense of trying to accomplish anything. He's been a civil rights person in the sense of wanting celebrity and money. No one took him seriously. Not until all of them started dying. Then all of the civil rights leaders start dying. Then he start telling tales of what happened. Here he goes. Here's another one. It's astonishing to me. And here's the full picture of that picture you saw in the video of the two standing together. Just astonishing. Just astonishing to me. All right. Now this is him speaking at his event. Let's play a little bit of this. This is the event, and then you'll see Eric get up and speak. This might be a different event.
That come to go to other places. Some of our donors that come here and then go home and have Thanksgiving dinner. My family stays all day. And my grandson thinks he's in charge. So we want on this day, as we all pray for peace, for the hostages over that is being negotiated, as we deal with so many issues in our communities.
So you hear what he's saying? You hear what Al Sharpton's saying? Al Sharpton is literally a propaganda walkie-talkie that is placed in the Black community. And on the other end of the walkie-talkie is the white power structure of cable news and all of the talking points from the government. Talking about, so if the Black community, so if you Black people in the community don't watch news, you're not hearing about the Israeli hostage, I'm here to tell you, we're praying for the Israeli hostages. Now, Al Sharpton, are you telling them about the Palestinian children hostages at all? So people like this misinforming the Black community. Now you ask yourself, why is the Black community still supporting the Democratic Party? Because you got people like this, infiltrators in the community, propaganda walkie-talkies for white power structure, who is parroting lines from the government. Truly despicable, but let's listen.
This is the day to give thanks. This is a day to say that we thank God for life, and we thank God for the ability to serve others. And that's all we talk about today. We can get to the other stuff. Come to Rally Saturday, I'll handle whatever you want to handle. But today it's about those that are homeless.
So he has to say this because he's about to introduce Eric Adams. He's like, motherfuckers out there, we ain't talking about nothing else, okay? Stick to the subject, motherfucker. Before he brings out his friend that he's covering for.
Those that don't have family to eat with, and migrants.
Motherfucker is the spit.
What the pressure migrants have had on the city, that the mayor and the president of the city council and the public advocate and the congressman have had to deal with. But what about the pressure on them? So we've invited even some of them to come and eat with us today. This is about all of us. Before we take our places, 31 years ago when we started National Action Network, there was one that stood with us then at the founding, been with us all 31 years, and he's been just about every Thanksgiving and Christmas since, no matter what position he's in. The mayor of the city of New York, Eric Adams.
Thank you so much, and it's good to be here with the other citywide leaders, Speaker Adrian Adams, Monty Williams, Councilwoman Gail Brewer, and our amazing Congressman Espaillat. I hope I'm not missing anyone in the background.
We don't need to hear nothing more from this clown, but I just wanted to show he's at the event. These people have no shame at all. Now let's go back to the video where they're covering this, and I'm gonna now put it right back where it was, where he began to talk about this here. So let's go right here.
The rules and the law, and that's what we're doing.
Now, switching gears, I was honored to have you join us on Thursday at National Action Network's House of Justice in Harlem to serve Thanksgiving meals to the needy. And you've been there just about every year of National Action Network, about 31 years, and you've certainly been there and on Christmas since you've been mayor. But the thing that was different this year, a number of migrant refugees seeking shelter in our city right now. And you've been very vocal about the dire situation that large U.S. cities face as temperatures drop and shelters are full. Many of these migrants are coming from climates that they certainly are not ready for winter here or in Chicago or other places. What needs to happen right now to address this issue, Mr. Mayor?
And you know, as you're right, as I joined the National Action Network and others on Thanksgiving Day, throughout the week on Wednesdays, I'm out giving out food every Wednesday, just about on 34th Street. But we also travel throughout the city. And your analysis is a correct one. As I saw the faces of people, I saw different groups, people coming from West Africa, from South and Central America, Russian-speaking locations, all coming through our southern border and making their way to New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, Houston, and other municipalities. And as you're seeing what's playing out in Massachusetts right now, where they basically stated they have no more room. We've opened over 210 what we call humanitarian relief centers, several different various shelter system, even opened a large HERC on Floyd Bennett Field. This is going to cost us $5 billion during this fiscal year, $7 billion we need to find in January. It is economically not sustainable, and the place is not sustainable. In other cities, people are sleeping in precincts, in hospitals, sleeping on the streets. We must come up with a real decompression strategy and ensure that we can use the over 108,000 different cities, towns, villages, and municipalities to spread this problem across the entire country and not just in certain cities. It is not sustainable. It's unfair to the migrants, and it's unfair to New Yorkers, taxpayers in the city.
Yeah, I saw an article in the New York Times just the last couple of days that there's been thousands of migrants coming in from China that come through South America.
Oh my God, this guy Al Sharpton is a fucking clown.
Nationality as some people for their own biased reasons want to do.
So he is trying to allude that somehow it's some sort of sinister thing too. These people, this is a conservative talking point. And understand, Eric Adams is, before all of what was happening to him with all of these cases that just recently happened to him, they love him on Fox News because he's always talking about migrants, but from a perspective like a conservative, complaining about migrants. And I'll show you, and we can end here with this headline from this article from Fox News, and they use him all the time. They use Eric Adams speaking, Eric Adams policies all the time to reference about how the migrant situation is bad. Even Democrats are saying it. They use Eric Adams' words all the time on Fox News. And this is just one example. Where is it? Where am I at here? Yeah. Mayor Adams urges rich New Yorkers to step up as city buckles under financial cost of migrant crisis. Adams has warned the crisis could destroy the city. And that's Eric Adams there. Do I want to hear what this motherfucker has? Let's play a little. If it plays a commercial, I'm just going to stop it. A lot of times these things plays commercials. Maybe not. Anyway, it says Mayor Adams is urging the city's richest to open their wallets to help the city weather a financial storm created by the ongoing migrant crisis, days after the city unveiled deep budget cuts. This is a moment where it's all hands on deck, Adams told a police athletic lead lunch on Friday, quote, "The way it goes, New York goes, America goes, but I'm going to need you more than ever to support many of these organizations like PAL, Robin Hood Foundation, and others," he said. "A moment where our philanthropic interests must align with some of the gaps and services that we are seeing today." Adams also reportedly urged New Yorkers to reach out to Washington, D.C. and demand more support for cities, which he says is carrying a national crisis. So understand, Eric Adams is being used by conservatives in this way to conjure up or manufacture hysteria around the border crisis, but not from the right perspective, a humanitarian perspective, but from a perspective of they will not replace us. That's the difference. So let me close that. Let's get to our last few topics here. Let's see what else we have. I'm not even sure, but we will go back to Twitter, but we'll close that one. I think I might have one or two more, or I should have one or two more is what the way I should say it. Hill Harper, yeah, that's another good one. I got that one. I got that one. I got that one. I got that one. So Hill Harper, yeah, I think that might be it. Oh, right. So Hill Harper. Let's get to this story here. I'll pop that open and then because we're going to be reading that article, this one here. So, but this is where we start. And we're going to start here. I'm going to get all set up and preface the story appropriately. But this is Hill Harper tweeting, or his tweet, I should say. And let's go to the right item. Last time I checked, we hit our goal of 350. Our new goal is 450. I'm sorry. So if you hit that like button, get us to 450 likes. Before I get into this last segment here, we got a couple of more super chats. Let me read those. Please see tweet by, I know that guy, Salamea, man. Breaking news letter from recent visit to Gaza, thanking host for treating daughter like a queen. And I believe I saw right before I came on what you're talking about. I didn't get a chance to delve into details, but I believe I know what you're talking about. But thank you for the super chat. Do all the things with love. This next one from Victor the Van. Thank you for this super chat. Al Sharpton is quote, "You listen to me talk, then go tell my story personified. Thanks for covering this slap, because there's no way I would watch this on my own." That's what we are here for, to shift or to sift through the shit for our audience and then deliver a slimmed down version of the turd to you so that you only get the basics of the turd. So let's get to this next story, though. Hill Harper offered $20 million to unseat Rashida Tlaib. And we can start here, Aaron. This next story is pretty interesting, and it involves a celebrity who wants to get into politics and a politician who some donors want to get out of politics, and that is Rashida Tlaib and Hill Harper. So Hill Harper says he was offered $20 million to unseat or run against Rashida Tlaib, and here is the tweet. Let's read it. Hill Harper says, "I didn't intend for a private phone call to turn public, but now that it has, here's the truth." Because apparently he was offered it, he turned it down, and didn't say nothing. He wasn't going to say anything about it. But the story broke. And he says, "One of AIPAC's biggest donors offered $20 million if I dropped out of the U.S. Senate race to run against Rashida Tlaib. I said, no, I won't be boss bullied or bought." That's what he said. But you're running as a Democrat, Hill. Shut up, sir. Shut up. You're running as a Democrat, but here's the headline. And it says, "Donor allegedly offered $20 million to recruit a Rashida Tlaib primary challenger." And we're going to get to that story in just a second. I'm sorry, to the actual article in just a second. But here he goes on to, of course, say, please donate. And he's a Democrat. And here's the proof. He's running as a Democrat for Senate. And here is Nina Turner chiming in saying, "I'm from the same school, which is why they and others groups poured so much money into a solidly Democratic district in Ohio to defeat me. I applaud your courage, HH," and that's Hill Harper. I want Nina to come on. I want Nina to come on. I think I'll have Zoya reach out to Nina Turner to come on. I want to have a conversation with her about this, about Democratic Party, about AIPAC, and all. So, and she also chimes in and says, "Speak the truth." I'm going to go ahead and like that here. I had already retweeted it. Now let's just look at a couple of the reaction, and then I want to get into the article. Here is Professor Zankas, or Anthony, what I call him. Professor Anthony chiming in. I retweeted him. He goes viral. "AIPAC has interfered more with our elections more than Vladimir Putin ever has." And that is a factual based statement from, she is. Well, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to put that comment up. I still would like to have a conversation with her, with Nina Turner. I see some of your comments. I still would like to have a conversation with her. I do see your comments, though. But Professor Anthony Z is spot on with this, and he went viral. Here is Nina Turner saying, "AIPAC is buying blue seats. It's anti-democratic. Good on Hill Harper for having the integrity to refuse that money. $20 million. Well, he's an actor. He's got money. He doesn't need it." And that is Nina Turner. I'll retweet that one. Blue Cheek Beth says, "We all know this is going on, right? And that Rashida Tlaib will 100% will have a primary challenger who takes the $20 million. And I'll retweet that one. I believe that is true also. They're likely to get somebody to take that. If a lobby group for Russia offers someone $20 million to run against a sitting member of Congress, it would spawn a journalistic investigation and the New York Times breaking news alerts. But not in this case. Not in this case. And that went viral. I'm amazed. Here's another one. AIPAC readily $20 million to get Hill Harper to drop out of his Senate race and take on Rashida Tlaib. Harper said, no way, he's compromising his values. AIPAC animated. And now, if you don't know, AIPAC is like the most darkest villain to progressive Democrats. They hate AIPAC so much. It is like the villain of all villains to progressive Democrats who are still in the who still vote with the Democratic Party. But let's move on now. We're gonna move on to the actual article. Let me go back one more. And that's Brianna Joy Gray just saying incredible. Let's see who chimed in with Brianna Joy Gray, and let's retweet her actually. And let's see. No one I know. So let's just move on to the article to get some more of the details of what supposedly happened. So we at least know the story. They don't need to say sources anymore on this story. The guy who the story is about has confirmed this through the tweet, and we just read the tweet. This is why I wanted to start with that, because it's not allegedly anymore. Donor allegedly offer is not allegedly anymore, and we proved that with the tweet from Hill Harper himself. And let's now read. The lucrative proposal to Democratic Michigan Senate candidate Hill Harper arrived on October 16th, according to a source with direct knowledge, and got rejected. A Michigan businessman called Democratic Senate candidate Hill Harper to offer $20 million in campaign contributions if he agreed to drop out and instead mount a primary challenge to Rashida Tlaib, according to a source with direct knowledge of the call. Now, we don't need to. There's no source. Hill has confirmed this. Hill Harper, that is. The source added that Harper declined the alleged October 16th offer from the donor, Lyndon Nelson, which would have split the campaign money between $10 billion in bundle contributions directly to Harper's campaign and $10 million in independent expenditures. You see the corruption? Because that will be my question. How exactly would you get him $20 million legally? And the answer is, it wouldn't be legally. It would be $10 million in bundle contributions to his campaign and another $10 million in expenditures. Harper declined to comment on the record. He was trying to keep it secret about the alleged call from Nelson, a Michigan entrepreneur and past donor to candidates in both parties, but he recounted the call in the same terms as the source in a post on X after this story broke. We're talking about Hill's tweet, and we covered it. But the episode illustrates the intensity of the blowback towards Rashida, the only Palestinian American in Congress, in response to her outspoken criticism of the Israeli government since its war with Hamas began. More than 20 Democrats joined Republicans in voting to censure Rashida early this month after she invoked a pro-Palestinian slogan that widely seen as calling for the eradication of Israel, and pro-Israel Democrats are still searching for a candidate to primary her. Just astonishing. So that's the story. Now, my final words on this story and Hill Harper is sort of a kudos, because you're still running in a Democratic Party. So, I mean, what does that do? You're saying, no, I don't want to be a Democratic stooge over there. I want to be a Democratic stooge over here. So, I mean, is it really something? But that's my take on it. Let's get back to Twitter. I think there's one more thing I can squeeze in here that I had not covered yet. So let's get to that part. I covered Abby Martin and Maya, just covered the Hill, covered the TMZ. This is the one I did not cover, and I'll cover that one next. The RFK debates I did not get to either, so I think I'll let me see which one I'll save to tonight. Yeah, this one we'll do tonight because we have the Post-Duopoly show tonight. I'll be doing 2 streams tonight. I'll probably do 2 streams tomorrow, and I'll be doing a bunch of streams until this month is out. Israel build tunnels. Let's do this. This is a Christiane Amanpour, I think that's how you say her name, clip that we're going to cover as the last segment for today. This is very short. It's a 2-minute clip that we're going to discuss. But let me set it up appropriately, and then we will cover this short segment. Let's refresh that. And let's put up the right banner here. Hit that like button if you haven't already done so. Man, I don't know how to say her name, so I'll just say CNN surprised by admission. I think that's how you say it. Yeah. Because I don't spell her last name right, I don't want to fuck it up and have it permanently be on the screen for this video. CNN surprised. So let's start here, Aaron. CNN surprised by admission by this former Israeli, I believe this is the prime minister, and this is on CNN with Christiane Amanpour. I believe that's how you say her name. But this is an interesting clip. Let's listen, and then we'll comment.
Can I just start by asking you what is your view of whether your government, your military, has done a good enough job of proving their claim that there was a major command center and bunker under Al-Shifa?
It's already known for many years that they have in the bunkers that originally was built by Israeli constructors under.
It's common knowledge that this was built by Israeli construction years ago. That's what he just said. So let's continue. Now, if you don't know who this is Ehud Barak, and it's spelled E-H-U-D, former Israeli prime minister. So this is the guy who had the position that Netanyahu has now. Let's let him further explain.
Underneath Shifa were used as a command post of the Hamas and a kind of a junction of several tunnels, part of the system. I don't know to say to what extent it is a major. It's probably not the only kind of command post. Several others are under other hospitals or in other sensitive places. But it's for sure had been used by Hamas even during this conflict.
When you say it was built by Israeli engineers, did you misspeak?
No, decades ago we were.
So, is this CNN realizing they've been lied to? This is real-time reaction of cable news realizing that the IDF and the Israeli government has been lying to them all along about these tunnels. Wait. You know they're there because you built them? Oh, yes. Yes. She's like, what? Did you misspeak here? Is this the first time you're hearing this? Christiane Amanpour, is this the first time that you're hearing this? Let me back it up a little bit, and I'm going to let it finish.
You say it was built by Israeli engineers. Did you misspeak?
No, you know, decades ago, we were running the place. So we held them. It was decades, many decades ago, probably 4 decades ago, that we helped them to build these bunkers in order to enable more space for the operation of the hospital within the very limited size of this compound.
Okay. All right. Well, that's sort of thrown me a little bit.
The whole narrative that she's been saying, it's like she's a magician and this guy just came on and gave away how to do a trick. They're like, what the fuck are you doing? Amazing. But did you hear what he said? The reason they built it was no sinister reason. He said because they had limited space where the hospital was to go this way in expanding, they went this way, digging lower. No sinister reason why it was built. Because this is what they asked. Who would build a hospital who would build these tunnels under a hospital? Israel would do that. So let's listen again. This is funny that she is realizing this real time, and we get to all watch it together.
Engineers, did you misspeak?
No, you know, decades ago, we were running the place. So we held them. It was decades, many decades ago, probably 4 decades ago, that we helped them to build these bunkers in order to enable more space for the operation of the hospital within the very limited size of this compound.
Okay. All right. Well, that's sort of thrown me a little bit. So these were there for a long, long time, but you're claiming, or they're claiming, that they're used as a major command center. Anyway, the fact of the matter is that as yet, they have not shown conclusive proof of that. So may I ask you what you would...
Christiane,
Yeah.
wait a minute. It's not easy. We take...
Not good. Not good at all. Okay, so let me see if I can find. So yeah, I did find one. I found an accompanying article. So let me bring this down. Just briefly bring it. I'll show the headline. It might read just a little bit of it because I do got to get out of here. It's the first article. I did see a CNN, but for whatever reason, it's not coming up now. I don't have time to kind of delve into why it's not coming up. But this one here from camera.org, Ehud Barak misleads about the Shifa tunnels. Former Israeli PM in an interview on CNN's Christiane Amanpour on November 20th seemed to say that Israel created the underground bunkers beneath Shifa Hospital, which Israeli officials have long said are used by Hamas for meetings to shelter from Israeli attacks. And let me make this larger. This is so interesting to me. Amanpour used the term bunker in her question, but the context makes clear that Barak then seemed to confuse bunker for basement. They are now trying to spin. So this article is trying to help spin. It is amazing that they're trying to spin that, but it is what it is. But Christiane Amanpour, the cable news, coming to the realization that, wow, we have been duped. These motherfuckers built this shit. We have been duped by the Israeli government, and it's caught on camera. Just destroying your fucking credibility, or I should say the little bit of credibility that you had left as a cable news source, because the media and press has single digit, if not their approval rating is in the teens. Just awful. So, all right, so that's it, everybody. I'm gonna be getting out of here. Like I said, gonna be back here in about 4 hours at 8 p.m. Eastern with the post-duopoly show. Make sure you come back. That graphic will probably drop around 5 p.m., about 3 hours before the show. So look for it there, the graphic along with the stream. Or you can just simply get on our Substack and get the notification when we go live. And you can get that when you join our Substack here. Make sure you hit that like button. Don't forget, if you're interested in volunteering as a producer for RBN, email us in the subject line, put producer. Or if you're interested in helping run or volunteer helping run our newsletter, you can also email us in the header, put newsletter or administration. I'm sorry, administrative for administrative position. Also, best way to help RBN and also help our editor is to become a Patreon member. $3 is our lowest, our starting package. So $3, $5 is our most popular, but $3 is the lowest. So for as little as $3, you could join if you would like, and we would love for you to become a part of our community. This is You Left Shit Out. I don't see any super chat, so I'm gonna take off right here. I gotta get going. So no closeout video, but stay tuned tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern. Come back for the post-duopoly show.